Hi, this is Dave Van Hoy. I'm the president of Advanced Systems Group, and I want to welcome you to Remote Control. It's a webinar series from Silicon Valley Video focused on innovations in remote and work from home production. Today, we're talking with Mike Cronk, who is the Vice President of Advanced Technology at Grass Valley, and they are definitely on the move on this topic. Mike, tell us about what you're up to.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for the opportunity. So at Grass Valley, about 3-4 years ago in some of our strategy sessions, we looked at trends where things were going, and we saw the tremendous power of elastic compute to transform many, many industries. And we saw that happening in broadcast in the OTT space, so on the distribution side of the business. But there seemed to be a large chunk of what we consider, broadcast workflows, especially live production, which just couldn't be addressed yet with public cloud, elastic technologies, and therefore those applications, even though live production is very elastic in nature, you have an event, you'd like to be able to spin things up and spin things down. It's not a constant 24/7. But there are a lot of technical challenges with live production in terms of how do I deal with latency, how do I get the signal I/O that I need. And so we set about doing a bunch of research, building a platform that we've kind of market with, I think announced in April. It's been on air since February of this year, called AMP. It's the Agile Media Processing Platform, so AMPP. And it is designed to handle those challenges for live production. And our first customer installations were based for master control, so live master control, switching multiple outputs and integrating commercials and those types of things. And then as the pandemic hit in March, we quickly kind of accelerated some of our plans to do actual live production, simple live production in the cloud. And so we're there with a number of clients now. And have a robust roadmap to push the envelope of what can be done with cloud technologies, and it's a very exciting time.
It is indeed, and I think especially relevant to our audience, is the topic of being able to do production, being able to stay in the business of creating content, and in order to do that is taking some definitely creative and innovative thinking, and especially as it relates to anything in the live space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of I think system integrators like your company, Dave, others that there's a lot of solutions, and people have figured out how to do live production. Really, kind of forced to do it probably sooner than we would have, based on the fact that with the pandemic, everybody had to work remotely, and so there is a lot of innovation in the industry, not just from Grass Valley, but from around the industry. We're just happy to play a part.
I can definitely understand that. I mean, I think that there are many products that were kind of in pipelines for a year from now and 18 months from now that are being pressed into service in their early states simply because some tool is better than no tool.
Yeah.
So how do you see the evolution of Grass Valley in this ecosystem? Within, obviously Grass Valley is, a major player in on-prem, every video production system, switchers, routers, cameras, you name it, Grass does it. And how do you see that evolving in your, advanced technology world and in the cloud implementation?
Yeah, there's a wholesale transformation of the company that's ongoing. I think, one of the things about Grass Valley, it's known for some of its hardware-based, products, switchers, cameras, routers, those types of things. The reality has been that even in those products, the percentage of engineering that is software based was, well over 50% for decades. However, working with the cloud, there's different technologies. There's the whole DevOps approach, continuous integration and deployment. A lot of techniques that are needed that frankly the IT industry and the big cloud providers have pioneered and done very well at. So there's a lot of learnings from others to put together a system that really is true microservices based. I think as we progress and see what happens, lifting and shifting something onto a VM and putting in the cloud is useful, but there's limitations there for a long-term architecture. And so we really wanted to set, from a technical perspective, had to do a lot of transformation of our processes and how we did things. And we're really in process right now, transforming not just how we approach technology, but business processes. How do we bill customers? How does all that work in the back office?
All of that
sales
is
process
a big part of it,
right?
No point in building products you can't sell.
Yeah, and we have a saying within the company: all roads lead to AMP, and that doesn't mean we're abandoning existing product lines whatsoever. But like in any transition, whether it was analog to digital, SD to HD, in our industry, there's a long tail where a lot of things are needed, and there's still some uses for these other technologies. But what all roads lead to AMP means is that every single product line in the company is thinking through, planning, in some case implementing, how do I do a product that's elastic? And that's really kind of a guiding strategy for our company. And so it really does affect all areas of the company.
I think that's really interesting. As I've been learning more about AMP and looking at some of the other offerings that are being used in the cloud today, AMP is a significantly different approach. It's based around a holistic systems, very broadcast, rock solid kind of idea, as opposed to, monolithic applications running in VMs, which certainly can do a lot, but don't honor the kinds of reliability and scalability issues that typically larger broadcast operations, ranging from, this will sound almost backwards, as simple as news or as complicated as sports. And Grass Valley has such insight into that. You mentioned that AMP is based around microservices. Can you talk a little bit about what does that mean in terms of implementation, and what does it mean for the users?
Yeah, no, I can certainly do that. So essentially, the one way to think about it is if you go to a traditional broadcast facility and you're building a control room, you have individual products that you can order from a catalog, you can get them shipped, you can rack them up and you put them together, and then you have a router in the middle of that. You connect them all up to a router if it's SDI or 2110 or whatever that is, and then you make those connections, and you have that's a very flexible way to make a system if you think about it, right? Because how many things do I need? I can connect them all up. There are individual things that I can deal with. If one breaks down, I can have another one as a backup. It's not the whole system that falls over. It's a piece of it. And in essence, it's how do we build that in the cloud? And microservices is an answer to that, so that in AMP, every input is a separate microservice that has a separate configuration and potentially a separate UI, although an input's pretty much there's not a lot to do with an input. Yeah. But a switcher then, for example, is an app that talks to maybe multiple child microservices, but it's one thing, and each one of those is something that I can deploy, just like I have those individual products in an SDI world. And so that allows me to really kind of build anything I want once I have those fundamental things. I think the other thing about monolithic apps, and Grass Valley has made a lot of monolithic apps, and some of our great sellers now, is when a customer comes and says, I need this or I need that, you have to actually figure out how to build it into the monolithic app, expose it in a UI. There's limited real estate. You start, paging. It's a fairly complex thing. And over time, you build this level of complexity in those monolithic apps that's hard to separate that technology. With microservices, because everything's in a more atomic unit, if somebody says, I need this thing, you can just put another UI on the underlying microservices and make something different, and then they can use that. It becomes much more flexible. You have more tools in the toolbox, and then you can, I think, importantly, because each of those microservices has an HTML5 UI, is I can do what I do in a control room, which is for every operator, I only give them the things they need. Everybody needs intercom. A graphics operator needs a graphics control surface, but they don't need a production switcher. And the A1 doesn't need an audio. He needs an audio desk. He doesn't need anything else except monitoring. So we can build UIs and then make those available to operators, and you can divide up the production like you do in a lot of those things, such that everybody's focused on a task that gives you a better production quality than if it's an all-in-one and one guy's trying to figure out how to push all the buttons. So those are some of the things that I think the benefits of microservices within kind of a broadcast cloud workflow.
Interesting. I'd like to wrap up with one more question that has been very interesting as we've been working, in cloud for our clients and working with multiple vendors, which is, I know you and Grass Valley in general, but you especially have been very active in the standards community and working around SMPTE standards and AES standards. And experientially, we're finding that a lot of those standards really were implementation-wise thought through with a focus on on-prem. And now, there's a lot of questions when you start to extend them into the cloud and a lot of things to flush out and to change. And
yes.
How do you see the evolution of standards for applications in cloud? Because as you said, our clients are going to end up with ecosystems.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And some of the quote unquote standards that people use in the clouds aren't technically even a standard today, but they're from one company and we use them. And right now it's kind of whatever works, let's go put it in there and make a system, right? But I think standards have a place and they're important. There's some efforts in terms of cloud to, I think it's a ground to cloud, cloud to ground type of efforts going on in VSF. But there is an opportunity to come together on standards. There's also, I think, for the vendors involved, an opportunity to partner and get together. Grass Valley has this notion of something called GV Media Universe, which isn't about just Grass Valley, but it's about an ecosystem of partners that have worked together to qualify solutions. Because no company can do it all, and so I think both
Absolutely.
Partnerships and standards work are gonna be important. But we need to also kind of press forward and move and develop real applications for customers. And sometimes standards takes a long time, so there's an art in pressing forward while working with the standards so that you can also facilitate that.
Guessing what the road might look like around the corner.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I really want to thank you for joining us today. This was super informative, and as always, we're excited about what Grass Valley is up to. It's such a stalwart in our industry. Thank you to our audience. This is Dave Van Hoy from Advanced Systems Group. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Silicon Valley Video Remote Control.